If you've been through long wavy grass, a deep cold river, thick oozy mud, a big dark forest, a swirling whirling snowstorm, and a narrow gloomy cave, where have you been? Children, parents and grandparents alike will know that you must have been joining author Michael Rosen on a bear hunt. Many will be able to repeat that familiar phrase, "We can't go over it, we can't go under it. Oh no, we've got to go through it." But mud, forests and gloomy caves are not the only thing we have to go through. Suffering too is something we cannot go over, cannot go under, but instead have to go through. There has sometimes been this false illusion that faith in Jesus is an escape route from pain. However, it is anything but. Jesus himself says, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Glancing at the news, hearing the stories of loved ones, and reflecting on our own lives all show us the reality of hurt and suffering in our world. But the question is, what do we do with that hurt? And how do we move through it as children of God? In Romans 12, verse 12, Paul tells us not only to be joyful in hope, as we explored last week, but also to be patient in affliction. Joyful and hope are lovely words. Patience and affliction are not so endearing. The word affliction comes from the Greek word thlipsis and conveys the idea of being squeezed or placed under pressure or crushed beneath a weight. When we speak of being afflicted, we speak of having the weight of the world on our shoulders. Different people in different places and at different times all carry different afflictions. Our troubles are as unique as we are, but our response should be the same: patience. When we are in discomfort, pain or suffering, our human instinct is to escape. Now sometimes that is a physical impossibility, whilst at other times we are called to endure. In some cases, the affliction will lift quickly. At other times, not so fast, never fast enough for most of us. And some people face an affliction throughout their entire life. The pain of our affliction is compounded, though, when we faithfully pray to God to be set free from it, and yet we still feel bound by it. How can we discover the purpose of our pain in God's plan? There's a story told of a man who found a cocoon of the emperor moth and took it home to watch it emerge. One day a small opening appeared, and for several hours the moth struggled but couldn't seem to force its body past a certain point. Deciding something was wrong, the man took scissors and snipped the remaining bit of the cocoon. The moth emerged easily, its body large and swollen, the wings small and shriveled. The man expected that in a few hours the wings would spread out in their natural beauty, but they did not. Instead of developing into a creature free to fly, the moth spent its life dragging around a swollen body and shriveled wings. The constricting cocoon and the struggle necessary to pass through the tiny opening are God's way of forcing fluid from the body into the wings. The merciful snip was in reality cruel. Sometimes the struggle is exactly what we need. I share these words with you today, knowing that they may conflict with all your thoughts. You feel that the last thing you want or need is the struggle. I get you. I understand on a human level. But as I reflect on the stories of God's people, I begin to see the purpose of the struggle. I remember Abraham, who was told he would be the father of many nations, but at that time was a childless old man. I think of Joseph and his Technicolor dreamcoat. God promised him that he would lead his people, but his earthly reality involved slavery and a prison cell. I considered Job, who continued to trust God when the world was falling apart around him. I recall the story of Daniel, chosen by God, but immersed in a fiery furnace and a lion's den. And then I remember Paul, who told us to be patient in affliction. This is a man whose life was threatened many times, who endured imprisonment, and was washed up in a shipwreck. It's tough out there. To face the reality of life requires resilience and strength. To face the realities of Christian discipleship requires patience to withstand under pressure. It is said that a diamond is a chunk of coal that did well under pressure. The true physics of this is up for debate, but the message tells us that pressure does not have to destroy us. It can instead refine us and make us beautiful. Our response to pressure, to affliction, changes us. The bathysphere was a miniature submarine used to explore the ocean in places so deep that the water pressure would crush a conventional submarine like an aluminium can. Bathyspheres compensated with plate steel several inches thick, keeping the water out, but also making it heavy and difficult to manoeuvre. But when you look out through the tiny, thick plate glass windows, what do you see? Fish. Fish that cope with extreme pressure in an entirely different way. They don't build thick skins. They remain flexible and free. They are not overcome by the pressure, but overcome the pressure by something inside themselves. God does not expect us or want us to face the battles of life alone. As 2 Peter 1 verse 3 says, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. The fish in the deepest depths can face the pressure because they naturally exert pressure around them. When we have a deep experience of God and allow him to fill us with his spirit, we too can not only survive the pressure around us, but thrive in it. In the summer of 1881, on the pebble-strewn shore of the Firth of Clyde, in a moment of intense sadness fueled by a tragic love story, the Reverend George Matheson composed a beautiful hymn. When George was just 18 months old, his mother realised that there was a serious problem with his eyesight. By the age of 18, he could hardly see at all. But he was popular with fellow students at Glasgow University, where he was academically brilliant and studied both arts and divinity. As his eyesight worsened, Matheson had to face life in a dark and often lonely world. However, this isolation led him to develop the remarkable imagination that made him a gifted poet and preacher. For Matheson, God was elusive, hidden in shadow, but ever present, even in the empty wilderness of the Highlands, which sheltered his parish from the winter storms. The familiar story is that Matheson's sadness on the day he wrote his most famous hymn was because he was rejected by the woman he loved. She'd declared that she would not give up her life for a blind man. The poem emerged on the day that one of his sisters, who had been his housekeeper and close companion, was getting married in Glasgow. Matheson, unable to go to the family celebrations, later described what happened. "It's the quickest composition I ever achieved. It was done in 3 minutes. It seemed to me at the time as if someone was dictating the composition to me, and also given the expression. My hymn was the voice of my depression. It was not made for utilitarian purposes. It was wrung out of my heart." This hymn George speaks of says this: "O love, that wilt not let me go, I rest my weary soul in thee. I give thee back the life I owe, that in thine ocean depths it flows, may richer, fuller be. O joy that seekest me through pain, I cannot close my heart to thee. I trace the rainbow through the rain, and feel the promise is not vain, that morn shall tearless be." In the midst of deep pain, under the pressure of affliction, this disciple of Jesus held on. He endured not because of some great strength of character or knowing the delight of instantaneously answered prayer. He endured because he knew of a love that would not let him go. He held on because he trusted a promise that one day, not necessarily today, morning will be tearless. I pray today that whatever battles, struggles and afflictions are weighing you down, you will also know of a love that will not let you go, and of a hope that one day, the new day, will be free from tears. God bless you.